Discernment is a term that is thrown around a lot. And in the way that it's thrown around, I'm going to attempt to explain it to you. But in the way that it's thrown around, it seemed to me like discernment was more like street smarts or common sense. And it's anything but. So I started researching it and I wanted to learn more about discernment, which led me to many different readings. And I'm going to attempt to define it and explain it to you in relationship to your spiritual path or in relationship to mostly my spiritual path. And you can apply it as needed to your life. But discernment is basically something I've had my whole life. It's, whenever you reach a question or you have to ponder something, it's your soul perception in relationship with God. And I've always had that. It always popped into my head, it's like that question, well, what would God do? Or what would Jesus say? And I've always had it my whole life. Didn't use it. And every time I didn't use it, life never worked out for me. I mistakenly, my whole life, thought in terms of, okay, I know I should be thinking about, how does my soul perceive this in relationship with God? And that question was always answered. The answer was always there. The problem is, in dealing with these questions and finding solutions, I used to always think about, okay, well, I'm not going to do that because society won't understand that. So here's what people will understand, and here's what most people would do, and here's what most people would want. So I'm going to go with that. Or I would ponder a question and my discernment would kick in. And I would say, no, I'm not going to do that because that's not the way of the capitalist system. I'm never going to make money that way. Wow, what a mistake to think in these terms. Because if you just use your discernment and think about how your soul perceives this question or this problem in relationship with God, you'll usually always make the right decision. And the thing I like about discernment is, which was always put to me in terms of, well, don't think like that, but I do. It's just this intense, unwavering desire for truth. That has to exist when, questions arise. You have to allow that kind of scrutiny to come in pursuit of the truth, okay? If discernment were just street smarts, let's say, there's a guy over there from New York and I'm going to go try to take his money and scam him. Well, he's intensely street smart probably, and you're not going to get his money out of him. That's not discernment, okay? Discernment is, again, your soul, how your soul perceives this in relationship with God. So I didn't always do these things right, and I didn't always allow the questions to arise to give me the right answer. And we have to develop that discernment so that we can recognize, what's genuine and what's not. You know, I did make a video a while back about, uh, mediums and channeled spirits and psychics online and things like that. And, what I think is disingenuous and things like that. But a lot of your discernment needs to be put into, recognizing the mediums or psychics that don't really channel anything but their own mind or the lower spirits. So it's said that 85% of what is psychically channeled, okay, usually comes from the personal subconscious of the person doing the channeling or from the psychic. Only 2% of information would come from masters to their disciples. So when we're looking at people online, or even reading a book that someone wrote, are they channeling? Are they psychically channeling spirits and things like that? Well, a lot of that comes from their own personal subconscious. And, it leads you to believe that most alleged channeling is instead the byproduct of some sort of self-delusion brought on by psychic immaturity. And some of it, I believe, is simply imagination creating its own characters. So think about this when you're listening to people, and people might be channeling, or you're dealing with psychics and things like that. So how does one scrutinize all this? Well, I came across David Lane's article called "The Spiritual Crucible," and it's basically comprised of 7 questions that you ask yourself. And it predicates itself on the fact that, true masters, don't ever ask for blind obedience, okay? They invite critical thinking, as I invite critical thinking. And everyone should invite critical thinking when it comes to everything in life, especially spiritual things. So I thought what I would do is not only tell you what the 7 questions are in the spiritual crucible, but how you could apply those to me and this channel. So the first question in the spiritual crucible is there a charge for membership? Okay. There's a lot of content online, spiritual content, psychic readings, things like that, where there's a charge for membership. They're going to charge you for that reading. No one, when it comes to spirituality, should be charging any money. Nobody, when it comes to spiritual healing, should be charging money. I see a million websites that or channels or pages or whatever that have a PayPal link in them, or a Venmo link or whatever. And a lot of them, say, well, donate through my PayPal link, because that allows me to put out more content, and, you can, I'll be your spiritual master, so to speak. But if you're having to pay someone to put out that spiritual content, and someone needs to be paid for that, I just don't think they're doing it right. So the question is, let's apply it to this channel, my channel. Is there a charge for membership? No, I don't even have a PayPal link on there. And I'll never sell anything. I don't sell my soul for any amount of money. The second question in the spiritual crucible is, does the teacher embody high ethics? There's a lot of spiritual content. But if you really research what some of these people are about, go to another page of theirs. Go to some other place where they're at. Go to their Instagram and see if they're involved in the reputation savagery of others, like so many people are. So, does the teacher or the content that you're looking at embody high ethics? Hopefully, I embody high ethics because I'm only going to speak the truth. I'm only going to speak my truth. And remember, I'm a master of nothing. So if it's not right, it's not right. If it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. So move on. Scroll on. Use your discernment to say, this doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm moving on. The third question is, does the teacher make claims about their spiritual development or powers? Well, do they claim to speak to Jesus on a daily basis, or do they talk about how God, embodied them midway through the day and gave them a message to give to you and things like that? I make no claims about my spiritual development or powers. I don't really think I have any powers. I have God in me, that's for sure. And what I think a lot about on this subject is that when I talk about my spiritual development or the things that I've learned, I'm mostly laughing at myself sometimes, or thinking about it in terms of, this hapless spiritual awakening that I'm having, and sometimes I just get a message out, but I have no idea if it's ultimately the right thing. It feels right to me, and I've broken it down using my discernment, and it feels right to me. But I don't have any special powers like that. If anything, I'm more of a claircognizant, which would lead most people to say, oh, you're full of shit, because it's just an inner knowing. I've had a million people say, well, how can you prove that? I can't prove jack shit, so scroll on if you don't believe it. But when people start talking about their spiritual powers and things like that, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think David Lane has it right in the Spiritual Crucible that we should be questioning all of that. The fourth question is, does the group proselytize vigorously for new members? Well, we all know of the religious organizations that are always looking for new members. Once again, if my stuff doesn't resonate with you and you use your discernment and it doesn't make any sense to you, scroll on, man. You don't have to become a new member or follower or even watch the videos. The fifth question in the Spiritual Crucible is, who appointed your teacher a master? I'll be the first one to tell you, nobody appointed me any type of spiritual teacher or master. I am who I am. I'm talking about my awakening and the things that I've learned in the hopes that maybe it resonates with somebody and helps somebody. And mostly outside of this channel, I've been able to help a lot of people in that way. But nobody appointed me a master. If me getting lied to and fucked over a million times in my life makes me a master, so be it. I think there's a lot of people out there like that. And you just gained a lot of insight, as I did, by living a difficult life, or however it came to you. As long as you used your discernment and embraced it, it's worth sharing. But again, the question is, who appointed your teacher a master? True saints and masters, they stress individuality and responsibility. This is where I start thinking about what I learned about Buddhism. I grew up Catholic. I never knew about Buddhism, but it stresses a lot of individuality and personal responsibility. East African spiritualism, I love it because they even reject the notion of a hell. I do as well. There is no hell, because if there's a hell, then you're not personally responsible on this earth. How many people have you seen say, well, the devil made me do it? That was a moment of weakness where the devil got in me, and where Satan came around and made me do that. But that's not me. That's not who I am. Yeah, I get that 99% of the shit that you do is right. But when that one thing came around where you fucked everybody over because of money or whatever, you're not accepting personal responsibility by saying, well, Satan got into me for a minute. No, you got into you. Read Carl Jung's shadow. He talked about the shadow. It's in you, okay? It's in you to be that kind of a person. And you need to choose to be above that and address your shadow. The most dangerous people are people who don't recognize that they have a shadow. They're the people who stand in front of the judge in a courtroom and say, I don't know what got into me. That's not me. Yes, it is. It's you. You did it. Accept full responsibility for it. So remember, who appointed your teacher a master? That's an important question to ask. The sixth question in the spiritual crucible is, are the teachings transrational or pre-rational? Okay, transrational teaches higher consciousness, okay? And that's what I'm teaching on this channel. That's what I've been able to kind of achieve myself. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking in front of this camera, is because I've been able to achieve a little bit of higher consciousness and do away with all the pre-rational teachings where, it's all about, dogma and obedience without any insight, things like that. I grew up Catholic, so I got all that Catholic guilt. But talk about not believing in what you were taught as a child. Every time I think about growing up, every time I would ask questions, at 12, 13 years old, I used to get from either my parents or from a nun or a priest at the church, or from some other higher up person in the church, I would get things like, well, you just have to have faith. Well, why are you questioning that? Don't question that. You shouldn't be questioning things like that. You should have faith. God doesn't like it when you question things like that. Yeah, the God I believe in, the infinite God I believe in, wants you to question everything, okay? So everything that was ever asked by me, even at a very young age, if I'm asking questions at 7 or 8 years old, yeah, my parents probably found an interesting way to explain it that I accepted in my brain. And, the priests and nuns and whoever at the church did the same thing. However, was that right? By the time I got to 13 years old, 14 years old, my questions, I didn't accept their answers anymore. And man, I would get treated with intolerance and just this look of disgust. Why are you questioning that? It's because you're not providing the answers. And if your religion and you as a person who swears by that religion can't answer those questions, that's a problem. So transrational thinking in a higher consciousness is the right way to go. And that's all I'm teaching on this channel. That's all I'm going to talk about. The seventh and final question to ask in the spiritual crucible is, what are the daily results of your interaction? So on this channel, what are the daily results of you watching a video that I put up? Are you a kinder person? Are you a more compassionate person? Are you a more honest person? Are you a more loving person? If you just become a worse person, my channel is probably not for you. And it's certainly not the intent of my channel. If you're going to, go out there and judge everyone and gaslight people and make them think that you're better than them and they need to do things differently, and, their actions are a part of all of their problems and things like that, you're just probably not doing it right. Following a spiritual path, here's the most important thing to remember. Your spiritual path can answer so many questions for you and guide you in the right directions. However, it doesn't ensure you against losing money. It doesn't insure you against being fucked over by some people. It doesn't assure that you're not going to experience some sort of natural catastrophe in this world. It simply does for you what it should. And that is that it helps you better cope with the situation at hand and just all the various aspects of the human experience here. So I suggest to everyone, as I do, that anything you read, anything you study, anything anyone tries to tell you, any content online that you look at, put it through David Lane's spiritual crucible. Ask those 7 important questions and see what resonates with you. Again, your discernment is just your soul perception in relationship with God. So don't make the mistakes that I made all my life and just put discernment on the back burner and say, well, society would dictate that I do this, so I'm going to make that decision. Or the capitalist system dictates that I should be doing this. That's the only way to make money. I think about this channel. I ignored everything AI told me to do, including put a PayPal link in here. I was supposed to do shorts and reels and use lots of video editing. I don't have any of these skills, and it doesn't resonate with me at all. And if you need to be entertained, I'm not the channel for you. I'm just a guy speaking about his spiritual awakening. What my channel is for is probably just to put your earbuds in and listen. Listen to whatever video you need at the time that you need it. But use your discernment. Use your soul perceptions as it pertains to your relationship with God. And my suggestion is, don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Don't worry about what the capitalist system tells you. Don't worry about any of this stuff. Just do what resonates in your soul as it relates to your relationship with God. Good luck.